This is Ole Miss's 5 most important transfer gifts they have received this year.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Merry Christmas. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily stop for all things Ole Miss Rebels. I am Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. On today's show, we're diving into the most important transfer gifts that Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss have received this year. From Kewan Lacey to Caleb Odom, these players are proof of concept of how Ole Miss football is building its program. This is the epitome of Moneyball in college football, where strategy meets innovation to keep the Rebels competitive in the toughest conference in America. Stay tuned for a special announcement as well in segment 3 that you will not want to miss. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make this community so great. Don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy offer fresh perspectives on college football, the SEC, and of course, Ole Miss. So go check them out. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. This transfer portal season looks different. Ole Miss is still doing very, very well. And we're going to look at some of the top 5 players of the transfer portal that they've gotten already. But it looks different. It's interesting because with rev share coming into the fold, along with NIL, that changes the calculus a little bit. So players are demanding more money, like Beau Pribula got $1.5 million to go play quarterback at Missouri. You are not going to pay a backup quarterback $1.5 million, which that is going to affect your options. Whenever Ole Miss, what they need and what they're looking for, they don't need to break the bank necessarily for it. So we'll see exactly how they do. Now, this year is interesting because there is not a Princely Monmielen. There is not a Walter Nolan in the transfer portal right now. There's no Quinshon Judkins in the transfer portal right now. But the players that are in there, Ole Miss is trying to fill needs and fit holes and also trying to decide whether or not they need to attack early and get this player and secure his services now, or wait and see who comes in a little bit later on in the transfer portal. We are still 4 days away from the closure of the winter transfer portal window, on the exclusion of the teams that have that 5-day window where players can get into the portal after their bowl game or playoff game or after any time they play their last game. So just know that the calculus and all this has changed. So this is the top 5 players, most important, that Ole Miss has secured so far in the transfer portal. And we are going to start with Caleb Odom. Caleb Odom is the biggest recruit that Ole Miss has gotten in the transfer portal since Walter Nolan, in my opinion. And the reason for that is what he does to your offense and things that it can affect. Because of Caleb Odom, there's a legit possibility at certain points of certain games next year, Ole Miss is going to run 13 personnel. That's 3 tight ends on the field at the same time at the 50-yard line. And it is the versatility of Caleb Odom that is going to make that happen. That is going to help the run game. That's going to help the blocking and create matchup problems all over the field. Caleb Odom brings that. But also, we should know that this is a proof of concept of the way that Lane Kiffin is recruiting. I have told people for multiple years it's not important to finish first in high school recruiting. Everybody's obsessed with landing high school players, obviously, because there's a whole economy around that at the moment. No, in this new NIL transfer portal era, it is important to finish in the top 2. Yeah, you would love to get the signature at the beginning, but if you don't, you need to be in that top 2. So if things don't work out the way that they were promised, which in recruiting it almost never does, they have a soft landing spot to come back at your school. That worked with Caleb Odom. That wasn't the only target that Ole Miss got this year. Ole Miss also landed Kewan Lacey, a transfer from Missouri. So this is kind of a proof of concept for Moneyball roster building for Ole Miss, recruiting high-level players and just kind of putting your best foot forward. But if something happens, you're right there to catch them if they fall. That is really interesting in high school recruiting, what goes on. And players like Deuce Knight, players like AK Deer, that's the next year version of this Caleb Odom and Kewan Lacey. That is why that nobody gets upset when a player in high school gets committed to another school as long as you're in that top two. That top two is so important. You look at Eric Singleton. Everybody's going to talk about the bag that Auburn dropped on Eric Singleton to get him into school. That's fine. Eric Singleton also had a number 2 school of the Auburn Tigers. That second to school, that ultimate decision that a high school kid has to make, that is going to weigh on their mind if and when that first school does not work out. It turns into a true list of probability. And more times than not, that number 2 school is going to be pretty impressive going on. The number 2 player in the portal is Jaden Yates. Jaden Yates transferred to Ole Miss from Marshall. He was an all Sun Belt type defensive player, tackling machine. He ended up with like 122 tackles over the course of the year. You have Andrew Jones as well. I think Jaden Yates is a little bit more polished. That's the reason he's on this list and not Andrew Jones. There was going to be a linebacker on this list. Both of them are really good players. Andrew Jones is the SWAC player of the year. Let's look at him real quick. He's from Grambling, a linebacker. He's 6'2", 220. He's the guy that can fill the role of that athletic linebacker behind a defensive line that we talked about on yesterday's show that will be so important for Ole Miss. But when you look at Jaden Yates, tackling machine. I think he views himself as like the 100-yard landlord or something like that, to where you have to pay rent to play. It's kind of fun. I listened to like David Johnson talking to him in the Red and Blue Crew podcast. But he is a guy that is a direct replacement potentially for a Carl Coleman and a Chris Paul. Same goes for Andrew Jones. These are people that are coming in to try and one-for-one replace who has left. Whether or not they will be really effective at what they do will determine based off of how effective that defensive line is. You're going to hear me harp on it all season. This is going to be a massive defensive line. And if it's Jam and Xavion and those guys, William Eccles on the defensive line, that is going to affect everything behind them. If those guys can demand double teams and play on the interior of that defensive line, this defense has a chance to be really, really good. Again, Jaden Yates and Andrew Jones are very athletic players. They are extremely athletic guys. And them at the linebacker position playing next to a TJ Daugherty, which is somebody that is a culture builder in that linebacker room, that's going to be important. One thing to remember with Jaden Yates, it will be important to replace Zach Arnett, who has left to become the defensive coordinator at UNLV. Zach Arnett's kind of been the linebacker whisperer in his course of his career, and everywhere he's been, the linebackers have played really well. Ole Miss needs to find some way to recreate what Zach Arnett did, because Chris Paul and TJ Daugherty played just like a Zach Arnett linebacker traditionally has played. They've been really good at what they do. So it's going to be on Lane Kiffin to find some sort of an analyst to help out Pete Golding to get that linebacker room the extra coaching and help that they need to ensure somebody like Andrew Jones and Jaden Yates, they're ready for the SEC Hall. Then it's going to be important with some of these positions is the evaluations can be pretty good. Sometimes they're just a level below the SEC, and you can't really tell that in the course of their games. That's one of the reasons it's nice that not only is it Jaden Yates, who I think is going to be really good, but there's also Andrew Jones. So in that situation, you can see exactly how it will roll. You know, we told you Andrew Jones and Jaden Yates, they bring big-time talent to replace Kari Coleman and Chris Paul, but it's up to Pete Golding to get them ready. You know, Luke Haas steps in also for Caden Prieskorn, and Caleb Odom adds versatility to the Lane Kiffin offense like never before. And can Patrick Kutas and Dylan Altanson fix the run game in 2025? Plus, Lucas Carneiro, Conference USA Special Teams Player of the Year, brings elite kicking to Oxford. Stay tuned for all of that. You know, there's nothing like the energy of being at a live game, the roar of the crowd, The sound of the sneakers squeaking on the court and even of spotting a few celebrities in the stands. I remember going to an NBA game a few years back, and the electricity in the arena was absolutely unforgettable. You just can't replicate that from your couch. This year, I'm looking forward to catching more games live, and Game Time makes it easier than ever through their new Game Time Picks feature. Whether it's basketball, concert, or theaters, Game Time helps you find the best deals on those great seats without all the hassle of endless scrolling. I just hopped on the app to check out tickets for an upcoming game, and Game Time Picks made it a breeze to find a super deal on amazing seats. Plus, the app showed me panoramic seat views so I could pick the perfect spot. No guesswork, no surprises. And it isn't just sports, by the way. Game Time also has incredible deals for concerts and comedy shows. I am planning to grab tickets for a concert just next month. And with all-in prices, I see exactly what I'm going to pay up front. No hidden fees at checkout. What I love about Game Time is their lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal, Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference. And with event cancellation protection, your tickets are covered if plans change. It's the most flexible ticketing app I've ever used. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download Game Time today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, all one word, for $20 off that first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So really interesting stuff. We're going through our top 5 list of most impactful transfers that Ole Miss has gotten so far. And we are going to leave Jalen Braxton off the list because at this point, I'm not 100% sure what Ole Miss and Pete Golding is doing as defensive back and at the cornerback position. I just don't have a read on it yet. It's not me saying one way or another. I just don't want to judge somebody that might be the number 2 cornerback when it comes to Jalen Braxton or the number 1 quarterback. So we'll see exactly how that goes for them. We'll start off with Luke Haas. Luke Haas is the tight end from Arkansas. He's from Bixby, Oklahoma. He is somebody that has come in and caught touchdowns, and he was a little bit of a weapon at times for the Arkansas Razorbacks this year and as a true freshman last year. This year he had Taylon Green and all of that. He's just a really good inline tight end. He's a direct 1-for-1 replacement for Caden Prieskorn. And with him and Daquan Wright and a potential spot for Caleb Odom, you have a chance for this Ole Miss wide receiver unit and tight end unit to get very big and very good at run blocking. You can see where the running game should get a lot better for Ole Miss in 2025 because of the girth of this Ole Miss receiving unit, both tight ends and wide receivers. And Luke Haas offers that inline tight end option with Daquan Wright as more of a slot tight end. And then you have Caleb Odom that is a jumbo wide receiver at 230 pounds. All of these players have a big-time future potentially in the National Football League. Every one of them. And knowing that and knowing how Lane Kiffin likes to build his offense around his stars. Now, I do realize that Deshaun Stribling at wide receiver, the new transfer that's coming in from Oklahoma State, and Caleb Cunningham and Caden Lee. This offense is going to be more bigger, I think. I think the vision of Lane Kiffin going into next season are these bigger players. They want big, long, athletic players. And what you do with them, that's pretty good. They want to match up advantage over linebackers and over cornerbacks. And all of these players can do that. And Caleb Cunningham's a big player. Deshaun Stribling's a big player. And Caden Lee just catches everything. He didn't drop a pass this season. The next player is another Arkansas Razorback. The AAA Farm Club of the Ole Miss Rebels is Patrick Kutas. Ole Miss struggled running the football this year. Patrick Kutas was a good player. Now, the downside for this and what you're going to hear is he was injured over the course of the season, just like Jaden Braxton. Whenever you have them injured and everything, they're going to say they're an injury risk. They're a problem. But Arkansas was working to protect both of their red shirt. So that tells you how valuable of a player and how good they are. Patrick Kutas is a interior offensive lineman. He's a direct replacement for the interior of that offensive line that struggled a year ago. For whatever reason, it just did not work that last season, whether It was at center, at guard, in the interior of that offensive line, especially with a team that runs as many inside zones as they do. It was problematic last season. Kutas is an excellent road grader, run blocker, and he was recruited in the starter for Sam Pittman, who just absolutely respects offensive linemen, and I respect everything he says about the offensive line. So Patrick Kutas is a guy that we need to watch in the near future on this. And finally, Lucas Carneiro. He's a place kicker from Western Kentucky. He is the Conference USA Player of the Year. He committed yesterday. I think when I say yesterday, December 23rd, I think he committed from Western Kentucky. No announcement has come out about it, or, like a Hayes Fawcett thing. But with kickers, that can always be a weird thing. This is a guy that was 18 of 19, 19 of 20, something like that. He missed one kick this year, and that was from 30 to 39 yards. He made 6 kicks over 50 yards this season. Whenever you have the weapon that Ole Miss has had in the last couple of years in Caden Davis, you need to replace that. That you need that direct replacement of what Caden Davis was, and Lucas Carneiro is that. He is somebody that you can count on in big kick situations. He has made big kicks, and we'll see exactly how he goes. Now, kickoff-wise, I do not know what it is. Now, he's 6 of 6 over 50 yards, which means he has a fairly big leg to begin with. But the rumor, and I stress rumor in this situation, is there's a kickoff guy on campus that has an absolute cannon for a leg that might be the kickoff man next season. I have not seen him. I do not know exactly what's going on, but that is the rumor. If somebody in the comments knows what's going on, post that information down below and kind of inform me and all the other people that are watching the show as well what type of kickoff person this is. Now, punter, obviously the rumor is that Lane Kiffin has found another Australian-type punter to bring in, so we'll see exactly how that looks. This football team, they are moneyballing it together, and they need a couple of pieces to take this from good to elite, but this is going to be a really good football team, a fringe playoff level football team in 2024 as it is. And if the breaks go their way, they're going to make the dance. If they don't, they will not. And that is what's going on. But if you look at the players that are being brought in, they're mostly all underclassmen with multiple years of eligibility, which means this team in 2026 might have another 2024 type preseason buzz about them when Austin Simmons is in year 2 of a starting quarterback, when some of these young players are coming in, when Caleb Cunningham and Caleb Odom and those guys are dominating on the outside. Whenever that happens, you have a chance to have an elite football team. I think next year they're going to be very good. They're going to be a fringe team, kind of what Tennessee was this season is what Ole Miss can do. And a lot of that depends on what they kick off in the Gator Bowl. You know my opinions on the Gator Bowl. I think the Gator Bowl was the first game of 2025. It's a de facto spring game. And I think that what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of players on pitch counts in this game. And whenever those players are on pitch counts, they come out of the game and the next quarterback or whoever comes back in. And then Austin Simmons steps in. You have a new right tackle and all the questions start to get answered. And some of that film gets developed that last year they did not have. So that would be my choice in this situation. So those are the 5 players that I think are the most important transfer portal signees that Ole Miss has gotten before Christmas to kind of get to unwrap them under the tree. Coming up in our final segment, we celebrate Locked On Ole Miss becoming the most watched podcast in Ole Miss history, all in under 3 years, thanks to you. I'll break it down and how it all happened, what's next for the show. So stick around for that. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. You can bet on which player will score the first touchdown or how many points each team will score. It's a thrilling. How about checking out the college football playoff lines where you can get Texas at -13.5, Just visit FanDuel.com today. It's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So, really cool milestone the Locked On Ole Miss podcast hit earlier this month, and we actually passed this number several weeks ago. But we wanted to save to Christmas as kind of a present to Loomers everywhere. Locked On Ole Miss has become the most watched Ole Miss podcast of all time. We hit that number in less than 3 years. And we're not going to stop where we are. We're not going to do anything different of what's going on. But it's really cool to see that all of the hard work that we have done has paid off. I want to thank Tom Vanderford, Derek Vandegrift, Kara McCutcheon, all of the people that had a role on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast at any point during the last 3 years. Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you so much for this. It means a bunch. It is validation for everything we've done. I started at the beginning of this football season. I said, hey, we're going to cover this year a little bit differently than we have. I said that back in July. And then we did. We went all in with our reaction shows, with all of this. And the result was multiple shows of over 5 figures, like 5 to 10 shows, just obliterating monthly record after monthly record, getting subscribers absolutely at a high super rate. You guys answered the call. Thank you very much for that. And this is so much fun to do. I genuinely enjoy doing it. So we will see where it goes from here, because we're going to continue to push the envelope. We are going to continue to be independent, because the fact that I am truly independent is not something that can be taken lightly. There's arrows coming from every side right now. The people that are basically propagandists for the school, and the people that are completely against the school but need the school for what they do. All of them are shooting arrows at me. That doesn't matter. And if you don't like the show, that's fine as well. There's several 100,000 a month that do. But we're going to keep doing what we're doing. You know, it's amazing to think about. Whenever I started this, whenever I had my surgery in 2019 and actually was just holed up for 3 months, and I could actually formulate this plan of how I could build what would become Locked On Ole Miss. I think it's pretty cool, because this is the genesis of what I came up with. There are roughly 10,000 Ole Miss fans that are willing to pay money for content. Ole Miss has dominated their coverage and every reaction catering to those 10,000 fans. That's the way it's been for the last 25 years. But what about the other 55,000 in the stadium in a football game? What about the other fans that are super Ole Miss fans but don't want to pay to receive content? That was the whole genesis for what I did and how to figure out how it went. After that, it was just figuring out how to do this. And we were able to do that at an extremely high level. You know, we've had Walker Jones on the show. We've had Coach Yo on the show. We've had guests from all walks of life and every sport that is imaginable out there. They've come on and do that. And because of that, we are now the most watched all-time podcast in Ole Miss history. And the pride that I have when I say that, and the social media blast that's going to go out tomorrow morning about that, the message that I'm going to have whenever we talk about that, you're going to hear the pride emanating from my voice. Because it was you guys that did this. It was you guys that said you wanted this. It was you guys that said, we do not want the same old thing. We do not want to go through what we went through when Hugh Freeze was the coach at Ole Miss and the coverage that followed that. We wanted something different this time. And you're answering the call. Thank you so much for that. And This year is going to be a weird year for me. It's going to be a very weird year with my surgery coming up in April. The way it's set up, I'm trying to make it to where there's guest hosts that come in and host this podcast as 3 days a week. We're going to have like some pre-canned, pre-recorded shows that happen during that time off. I might be 3 to 4 weeks out at that point. But if we can make this work the way it's done, it should be really good. I've already set up potential interviews that are big time, that are closer to spring practice. Already set them up, already done that. Before my surgery, we're probably going to have the first one, and it's going to be really cool. We are going to continue to be the voice of the forgotten fan at Ole Miss. The one that Ole Miss absolutely did not cater to. We are going to be their voice. This is their show. This is the alternative show for Ole Miss sports. Opinions, takes, perspectives. That's what we do. We don't do anything else. We've quickly found out that news breaking, there's no market for it anymore. There's just not. It's all opinions and takes. And if you can do that and you can be polarizing enough, which I am, I think you can develop quite a following. I do want to say thank you to everybody and Merry Christmas to everybody. From the Locked On Ole Miss family to yours. Merry Christmas. And this has been absolutely awesome. Thank you. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in the college football world. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Merry Christmas, everybody. Hotty toddy.